Okay, we want to open with a activity. You go to the next slide. Let's start by, participating right away. We wanted to start by just asking you what your favorite teacher's name was and what makes them stand out in your memory. So I'm hoping you all are familiar with this, but you can use sticky notes and add them to our Zoom whiteboard. And as you think of those things, and I hope you all participate in this exercise. It's special for me. My favorite teacher was Miss Hawes, and I encountered her in the 5th grade at Percy Avenue Elementary School. I remember lots of things about her. She was quite a character, very interesting, stern, to say the least. I recall mean being a term that was often used to describe her. Uh, the most important thing I remember about her is that she really believed I was smart. And so she was the first teacher I recall getting that kind of feedback from. And that was important. I'd gotten that message from my grandma, but whose grandma doesn't think they're smart? She was an expert. So having a teacher expert affirm me in that way made me feel uniquely seen. And it really helped cement my own beliefs about myself. And that's a gift that I'm still carrying all these many years later. I'm Dr. James, and I lead the research teams that are engaged in working on the projects that you'll hear about during today's webinar. And I really want to sincerely thank you for joining us. I'm reading all the names. Oh, Miss McGuire, Miss McIntyre, 4th grade, Sister Carmen, oh, Ms. Albans, at State Street. Okay, Miss Rashad and Miss Jenkins at Noble Middle School. I love seeing middle school because I feel like they're the unsung heroes often. Miss Constantine, oh, love it. Mr. Castro, male teacher, 4th grade, was the first time my Mexicanness was acknowledged as a good, positive thing. Thank you for that. That's fantastic. I love these stories. And I assure you, I'm going to read them all because I love our stories. Thank you for sharing them so much. And as I look at the responses that are posted, I wonder, how did that teacher make you feel? And how do you feel now as you think of them? Ah, Miss Silver Laces. Okay. I wonder if she's still there. Miss Stringles, the dance teacher. Love that. Palms, Mrs. Chapel. Um, I had children that went to Palms. I'll have to check in with them. I love it. I love these. This is fantastic. As we transition to a video message from our faculty director, Dr. Tyrone Howard, and the formal start to our program today, I just want to encourage you to hold the very best of our educational memories alongside our shared expectation that Black students and all marginalized students will have experiences that will ground them and support lifelong learning. Next, you'll hear a few words from Dr. Howard to welcome us.
Hello, and happy Black History Month. My name is Tyrone Howard, co-director of the UCLA Center for the Transformation of Schools. It's with deep, sincere regret that I cannot be there with you, but nonetheless, this is the next best thing. I want to talk to you about the importance of why this webinar is important and why we, the Center for the Transformation of Schools, continue to be very explicit and unapologetic about supporting the needs of Black students. Since our inception, UCLA CTS has been dedicated, focused, and unapologetic in focusing and fighting for all marginalized student populations. But when one takes a deeper dive into who some of the most marginalized populations are, Black students, sadly, typically come near or at the top of that list. Some of our work has been very intentional about focusing on some of the factors that affect Black students. One of our first major reports was Beyond the Schoolhouse, where myself and Dr. Joe Bishop, Dr. Stanley Johnson, Dr. Pedro Noguera looked at factors beyond the schoolhouse that impact Black students' opportunities to learn. And in that report, we found out it wasn't just what was happening in the classroom, but issues outside the classroom, such as climate, such as issues around incarceration, looking at the environmental factors, were having a profound and disproportionate impact on Black students. And in that report, we made a strong call for state, local, and federal entities to do more because we need to recognize that Black students were suffering from what we call an accumulation of disadvantage. We didn't stop there. Several years later, we had the detrimental effects of COVID-19, where we had our second report called Beyond the Schoolhouse, Digging Deeper. We saw that the effects of COVID, while they impacted all groups across the board, they had a really deleterious impact on Black families. We saw Black families were less likely to have access to high-speed internet. We saw that Black children were in households where they did not have adult supervision because they had adults who were likely to be essential workers. And the list goes on and on and on. And in that report, once again, we made some very explicit and persistent recommendations and policy suggestions to create the conditions that will help improve the conditions and circumstances for Black students in schools. But we have been unapologetic, as I said, not just in focusing on the direct plight of Black students. The UCLA Black Male Institute has been housed in the UCLA Center for the Transformation of Schools. And there's been an intentional focus looking at specific needs of Black male students. Just last week, as a matter of fact, I had the opportunity to sit into one of our classes, our Black-climated class that has been going on for 12 years now, talking to young Black undergraduate students, Black males, about what they face, where they talked about issues such as mental health, racial profiling, financial literacy, alumni networks, and the kinds of things that they need to be successful as a part of their UCLA experience. Now, I must say that UCLA CTS has also been intentional in looking at a host of other topics that, while not mentioning specifically Black students, but have had major implications for Black students. When you consider one of our major reports, our focus that we looked at on the state of crisis, which looked at homelessness in the state of California. What that report showed us and what the research showed is that of the 275,000 young people who experience homelessness on any given night across the state of California, a disproportionate number of those young students were Black. Our report on foster care was also illuminating because it showed once again that Black students are only 6 to 7% of LA County, but they make up close to 30% of all students who are in foster care in the county of Los Angeles. And the list goes on. When we look at educator diversity, a need for more Black teachers, when we talk about equitable school funding, schools that had higher numbers of Black students. So if you look at our track record, if you look at where our focus has been, when you look at where we have done deep inquiry and we've done sustained investigation, it's been looking at those topics that have the greatest impact on those who are oftentimes suffering the most. Who are the student groups who are most overlooked and underserved? And we know that those students typically tend to be Black and brown students. And so part of why we're honored to be able to do this webinar today is because we will continue to say, while we focus our spotlight on Black students during Black History Month, we have not let our inquiry be only limited to Black History Month. 12 months out the year, UCLA CTS is constantly asking these probing questions about how we continue to investigate why Black students are overlooked and underserved. See, we operate from a standpoint that when you help those students who are oftentimes the most neglected, the most marginalized, that ultimately everyone wins. So that's why we have to, especially in this climate, continue to put that spotlight on what's happening with Black students, Black families, and Black communities. If we can get it right here in Los Angeles County, it can be a model for the rest of the state, and dare I say, for the rest of the nation. So I want to thank you for being here today with us to listen, to learn, to study, but we also ask you to hold us accountable to say how we can do more work to produce solutions, to provide us with evidence-proven interventions. We have belabored this problem long enough about the issues that affect Black students. We have to find things that work. We have to find approaches that are proven. We have to find pedagogies that are going to help transform the educational experiences and outcomes of our Black students. So I want to say thank you again for your participation, your engagement, and thank you for your contributions to be a part of this work. I also want to shout out the amazing team of folks that work with at UCLA CTS, Dr. Joe Bishop, Dr. Stanley Johnson, Dr. Angela James, all the folks who've been integral in helping to put this event on, and our amazing staff. We have to do the heavy lifting today, because if we do the heavy lifting today, then the plight for our students will be lighter in the future. So enjoy the webinar and continue to fight the good fight and enjoy. Thank you so much.
Angela, you're on mute.
Well, that gave you a good long time to look at some of the Beyond the Schoolhouse and Bright Spots reports. I can hardly say it better that the work that you'll hear more about today rests on a legacy of research in this area done by the Center for Transformation of Schools. And each of the projects today springs from this legacy of research that are pictured in this slide. Beyond the Schoolhouse, as was mentioned, centered reviewing inextricable connections between school outcomes and economic and social and environmental conditions. And that work, along with the Digging Deeper report that followed it, really informed the creation of the supporting the African American to guide statewide work in this area. And that is now providing the framework for the Genius Initiative that we'll hear more about. And similarly, the Bright Spots brief had provided a real springboard for the current work on Black academic success in Los Angeles County. And so the reports that you see listed and the initiatives that are listed are all that we build on the work of each of those projects to envision more work and more projects. And similarly, we are hopeful that the current projects will first more work in this area. With that, I will turn the mic over to Dr. Bishop.
Thank you, Dr. James. Good morning, everyone. And Dr. James and Geneva Sum are really the spearheads in organizing this webinar. And to Dr. Howard's point, the work of the center focuses on the success and well-being of Black students and families 12 months out of the year, 365 days. All of our work centers on Black youth, but we have an obligation and a responsibility as a research center to really elevate Black brilliance, not only in LA and California, but across the country. So that's why we're here today. And I know many of you, we have over 40 questions from audience members. We're not going to get to all of them, but today we're going to at least highlight, elevate some of our research. We're going to get into the Genius Initiative led by Dr. Taisha Noyes, who's a project director for the Center for Advancements of Racial Equity, and our lead for LACO with Genius, which is an amazing acronym, Genuine Empathy, Nurturing Intellect for Underserved Students. We're also going to hear from Jean McAdoo, who's a doctoral student at UCLA. And last but not least, Dr. Jacobson, who's an analyst at UCLA, is going to join forces with Dr. James, who's a senior researcher and has really been a lead author and kind of an intellectual powerhouse to support much of this work today. I'm the co-founder and executive director for the Center for the Transformation of Schools, but I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Dr. Noyes. The next slide.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome. We are so privileged to share with you about the Genius Initiative. As Dr. Bishop mentioned, Genius is an acronym for Genuine Empathy and Nurturing Intellect for Underserved Students. Next slide, please. Oh, that is a lovely picture. The Genius Initiative is funded. It is funded by the Equity League Grant, which is part of legislation from Senate Bill 114, Section 79. Over a decade ago, our now Secretary of State, the great Dr. Shirley Weber, began fighting when she was in the legislature and saying, if we wanted to see improvement among the outcomes for Black and African American youth, that we needed a concentrated way to do that. And part of that concentration that she argued for was not just curricular, but she was arguing for funding. She was saying that every time that we see a marginalized make gains, it is because we made a full-blown investment. So not just an intellectual investment, but also an investment of human resources and an investment, right, of financial resources. And so for over 10 years with the Black Legislative Caucus, et cetera, all the way down to her daughter, who is now in our state legislature. They fought to make this law. And so with that, the Equity League grant was funded. We have lovingly named it the Genius Initiative because we believe that it's important to name what it is that we long to see and what we want for every child, every Black child in every school, everywhere, every day, in every moment is for their genius to be seen, acknowledged, and elevated, right? And so that is sort of the overall point of the Genius Initiative. But here you'll see 4 basic bullets. If you went to the RFA for the Equity League grant, you would see that it's our job to partner with LEAs to analyze data. You would see that it's our job to support them in developing and implementing programs that address the racial disparities that most impact Black children and other marginalized groups. It's our job to help them cull resources, right? There's so many things. There are over 20 initiatives in the statewide system of support, of which the Equity League grant is a part. But sometimes they're hard to put together, right? They're hard to grasp. And so it's part of our job and our role as Equity Leads is to help schools and LEAs and charters figure out what's out there that they can use in order to elevate the experiences and outcomes of Black and African American youth. And then, of course, to help them get those goals around how they want to elevate Black youth into LCAP goals, and then to monitor progress. That is the goal of the Genius Initiative. Next slide, please. Part of the way that we do that is we have the opportunity working with Sonoma County Office of Education and the Kings County Office of Education, as well as our beloved partners here at UCLA, to build a cohort of 30 schools statewide, 30 LEAs, most of which are equity multipliers. And we offer 3 tiers of support in order to get this done. The first thing that we offer is what we refer to as our Tier 1 Freedom Dreaming for Student Success event. And what it does is help folks ground themselves in the supporting the African American learner research. I don't know if the great Dr. Catherine Edwards, who is the lead project director for that document, is on the line. She co-authored with many of the great and wonderful folks that are here at CTS and throughout the state to write a guide that culled the research about what are the issues that Black children are facing, and then what does the research say are evidence-based practices to address, right, where those disparities exist. Our Tier 1 event is 3 days. It's a free mini conference where we walk you through the research so you understand not only what the research has to say, but what you can do about it on your campuses every day. Within the network, we also offer Tier 2 communities of practice. So for the 30 schools that are in the network, we offer a Tier 2 where we walk folks through improvement science, PDSA process. What does your data say? What are your goals? How do you implement meeting those goals, right? And then we also offer within network a 3rd year of coaching where we walk folks through implementation practice, right? Implementation is the hard part, right? We can sit and have the meeting, we can go through the data, we can do the plan, but the truth is we need things to happen on the ground. And so we bring educators who have been site principals, who have moved the needle on behalf of Black children to walk alongside other leaders who want to move the needle for Black children. And so that is the Genius Initiative by and large. 3 tiers of service in network, but 2 tiers of service that are available to any wonderful human in the state who wants to join this work. For those of you who are saying, where can I have this experience? I have 38 seconds to tell you that our next event is in Kern County. It'll be in Bakersfield on April 15th through the 17th. 3-day deep dive into the supporting African American learner research. And after that, we'll be back at LACO in July 20th through the 22nd to offer that information. And then we'll be moving our way up the state. But we welcome you. We want to lock arms with you, and we want to change outcomes and futures for Black children. And that is the purpose of the Genius Initiative.
Good morning,
Thank you
everyone.
so much, Doctor. Thank you so much, Dr. Noyes. I'm so appreciative of the Genius Initiative and for you being able to share that with us. I just want to remind everyone that there'll be plenty of time for questions in the breakout rooms. But now I will just start by introducing myself again, Dr. James, and our project. Together with Dr. Jacobson, we're going to share in providing you with a brief overview of our research examining Black student success in Los Angeles County. So just to ground this in the study a bit, in the history, the very idea that education is so important to ensuring a free and democratic society, that it must be made available to all. That very idea is Black history. As W.B. Du Bois pointed out in his book on Black Reconstruction, public school systems themselves, goes open to all with no distinction favoring class or social position, began with the yearning, demands, and enfranchisement of Black people. So in this study, we look at schools as spaces where the policies that may be motivated and created at state level or district level are actually enacted, implemented, and embodied. Administrative leaders, teachers, students, school communities form the core focus for this study. They are the unit of analysis for this study. And embedded in our research design itself is the recognition that schools continue, as they have historically, to serve as important sites where intellectual growth, social connection combine to prepare our children as co-constructors, as engaged and visionary creators for more just futures. So Dr. Jacobson's going to tell us a few details about how we went about the work that we do in this study. And yeah, we look forward to talking to you in greater depth in the breakout rooms. Dr. Jacobson?
Thanks, Dr. James. So the idea behind this project was to identify a subset of schools across LA County that have consistently overperformed expectations in terms of the percentage of Black students meeting or exceeding grade level standards in both English language arts and math since 2022, as measured by the Smarter Balanced summative assessments that are administered each spring. Based on our methodology, which we'd be happy to explain in more detail later, 70 schools emerged as positive outliers. So this map shows their geographic distribution across the county. 39 of the schools are part of the LA Unified School District, 8 are in Compton Unified, 6 belong to Inglewood Unified or ABC Unified, and the remainder are spread out among 17 other school districts across the county. Next slide, please. Having identified a set of outlier schools, we're really interested in understanding some of the common features that set them apart. So based on how we're defining the subset, the outlier schools exhibit substantially higher levels of Black student achievement than the rest of the schools across LA County. On average, the proportion of Black students meeting or exceeding grade level standards is about 20 to 25 percentage points higher in English language arts and about 25 to 30 percentage points higher in math. On average, the proportion of Black teachers at the outlier schools is about twice as high as the proportion of Black teachers at other schools. These schools also typically have substantially higher proportions of Black students than other schools. We see substantially lower suspension rates, both the overall rate and for Black students specifically at the outlier schools. The pervasive countywide disparities in suspension rates between Black and non-Black students are just not apparent at the outlier schools. And we also observe lower rates of chronic absenteeism and non-stability at the outlier schools. Chronic absenteeism rates are typically about 10 percentage points lower, and non-stability rates are about a third as high at the outlier schools as they are at the non-outlier schools. Next slide, please. So as we move into the panel discussion in the breakout rooms, we'd really welcome discussion of the role of school culture and community, and we look forward to digging deeper into our methodology, some additional initial findings, and any further questions that are emerging from this analysis. So unless Dr. James has anything else to add, we can move on to the Dorsey High case study.
No, absolutely not. I'm looking forward to digging in our breakout rooms to discuss it more. But let's move on over to Dorsey High School and our case study regarding Black Student Achievement Plan.
All right. Good morning, folks. I'm Gene McAdoo. I'll be talking about Dorsey today. But before I talk about Dorsey, I want to talk about my own experience at Dorsey. I think I have a kind of unique perspective as a former student at Dorsey. I also worked there with the college access program based at UCLA. And I think I want to do this to really kind of underscore how transformative BSAP has been over the last 5 years. So from my own experience, I can attest to a lot of the difficulties that are faced at Dorsey by students and staff. I went to Dorsey prior to BSAP implementation in 2015 to 2016, right? So I experienced what the school was like during the era of random search marches, of students being placed in handcuffs all too frequently, of us having fewer than 10 AP classes, right? So I love my time at Dorsey as a student when I was 15 or 16. But my mom took me out because there unfortunately wasn't too strong of a college going culture. Right. And so I experienced this as a staff member as well as a staff member of a college access program based at UCLA, where I was able to directly experience what it was like to try to serve students when the school just didn't have all the necessary resources needed, right? So my role was to kind of help fill the gap in college counseling and along with programs like Upward Bound. And so I'd like to think that we did a good job, but I was only there once a week, right? So I could not possibly do the work of a full-time college counselor. Um, and so, just I was able to directly experience, right, what it was like to be at Dorsey, right, when it was underfunded and under-resourced, and some of the things that contributed to low test scores, right, low college readiness rates, A through G completion rates, et cetera, right. But fortunately, as all of this was going on over the last 10 years, students, alumni, teachers, and parents have been organizing for over a decade, right, to fight for more resources and support for schools like Dorsey, and help ensure like that some of these like outliers that we just talked about becomes the norm. So in 2021, a coalition of students, parents, and teachers that I just mentioned, they got together under the banner of the Police Free Schools Coalition and created and advocated for the implementation of what became the Black Student Achievement Plan. Right. So in recognition of some of the longstanding inequities that I just mentioned, this group advocated for the LAUSD to defund the LA School Police Department by $25 million and allocate those funds towards what became the Black Student Achievement Plan. And ever since the district has, the Students Deserve has been able to, the Police Free Schools Coalition has been able to push the district to give more and more money to the plan. But Students Deserve and the Police Free Schools Coalition, they called for the district to address some of these longstanding inequities by hiring more psychiatric social workers, college counselors, offering more diverse and culturally responsive curriculum, decreasing class sizes, increasing relationships with parents and community organizations. And really, this kind of audacious and plan was really rested on this idea that you can create a safe and nurturing and affirming schooling environment without relying on school police presence, right? We know that school police presence and these sort of punitive disciplinary practices that accompany increased school police presence disproportionately harm Black students, right? So how do we reimagine schooling and school safety without relying on this sort of carceral environment? And so to do this, the BSAP initiatives include things like, right, dedicated staffing, right? So hiring like BSAP site coordinators, counselors, restorative justice teachers, and importantly, psychiatric social workers, implementing culturally relevant pedagogy, right? Like AP and curriculum like AP ethnic studies, or sorry, AP African American studies in particular. Um, and something that's been really impactful that we want to highlight has been the creation of the Safe Passage program, which was the program that's staffed by like community members before and after school. And the idea that guided the creation of the program was that if you intentionally pull and coordinate resources from the community, people from the community, you can create this climate of safety, again, without relying on school police presence. Right. And so the Safe Passage program relied on what they called school climate advocates, right? These are young people who are young adults from the school, from the local community who are, close in age to the students, and students and staff and parents. Everybody that we talked to really reported that these people gave a really strong mentorship for students. They were really strong advocates, and they supported students directly. And something that we also want to underscore about Dorsey is, and what helped create this, or what helped make this intervention so effective, was that Dorsey has a really unique culture. A lot of the teachers and staff at Dorsey have been there for a very long time. There's this very strong sense of pride at Dorsey. There's deep connections to the community, right? Like generations of families send their kids to Dorsey. So in a lot of ways, there's already this very familial like culture, and that made it a lot easier to build the sort of trusting relationships that make a program like this effective, right? And so we had one teacher that we talked to who said, and I quote, "In my decades of teaching, I've never seen any one program as impactful on the whole community as this one is." We had another teacher who was reflecting on the program more generally, who said it's hard to put into words how impactful this program has been. Kids feel more free, engaged, and hopeful. And it's not only transformative for students, it's transformative for the community. And so we have data, right? We have the quantitative data that backs this up as well, right? We've seen over the last 5 years since BSAP has been implemented, we've seen an 8% increase in graduation rates, a 12% increase in A through G completion rates. Black student enrollment in AP and honors classes increased by 20%. We've seen a decrease in suspension rates, an increase in the sense of belong, and students saying that they feel like they belong, they feel affirmed, they feel like it's more academically rigorous. We're seeing all these really transformative impacts that BSAP has had. So, the transformation that these, pesky and audacious students and teachers and parents want in the form of BSAP has been really transformative at Dorsey, right? And I think last thing I'll say is I think what we're seeing at Dorsey can really be a case study for what schools can look like when we ground our efforts and our interventions in addressing the harms and inequities that Black students face. So kudos to Dorsey.
Thank you so much for that, Gina. It's I can attest to the specialness of that school community. One of my children went to Dorsey as well, and so it has been delightful to see the transformations of that campus, and really great to hear and see and participate in the research that went into telling this story. Thank you so much for sharing it. Now we're going to transition to our panel discussion, and we on the panel will take questions from the moderator, some of which are kind of gleaned from the questions that came in to us from you. And again, we'll in a bit have a chance to delve into anything we don't answer completely here in our breakout rooms.
Thanks, Dr. James. Yeah, Gene McAdoo, thank you for concretizing what's possible um, when you involve young people and families in the process of really transforming their schools and communities in the process. And really excited to see the Dorsey High School case study. And we're excited to share it. So thank you, Gene, for your leadership. And I think your example highlights kind of a bigger question. I'd say probably about 10 or maybe about a third of the questions we received were around what do we know essentially around the common ingredients for supporting Black students, Black student learning, Black student achievement, Black student well-being. And I'm wondering, let's start with Dr. James. We look at the outlier study and we looked across sites. What were the common ingredients? And then maybe Dr. Noyes, if you want to add at the county level, how the county is thinking about success for Black youth.
Thank you for that question. One of the things that we notice is that outlier schools tended to have a larger percentage both of Black students and of Black teachers relative to non-outlier schools. So, that kind of suggests something that we want to really look more closely at in the coming. This was the quantitative component of the study where we kind of used those methods to identify schools that emerged as positive outliers. But we want to find more about the actual practices that exist on these campuses, and they're really a huge variety of campuses. And so, but those two things did emerge, suggesting the importance of relationships. And I think that kind of is amplified by what the case study just mentioned seems to share.
Thank you, Dr. James. I would like to add, right, if we took a moment to zoom out and consider the conversation even nationally, right? Back in 2018, Raj Chetty from Harvard at the time published a study where he talked about, right, a lot of the things that we believe, right, are the biggest hallmarks in positive outcomes are less important than we think, right? And one of those things being like parental education, right? What he said is that when you put many different kinds of children, so Black children, Latino children, Asian children, right, up against white children, and they grow up in the same communities with the same access, with all the same things. Only 1% of the time do Black children come out in the same place in the long run, right, in their lives, right, their ultimate outcomes, right? He said, in that place where that 1% happens, he was like, two things are true. Number one, a reduction of racial bias. There is a lesser amount of racial bias in whatever that community is where they came from and grew up, right? Than in other places. The second thing that he said is that there is a present of mentorship, particularly around fathers, right? And I want to name those two things because I think they're an important place to start, and I think they're an important way to lean into this conversation, right? Then I want to crosswalk over right to the principles, right, that are that guide or support the stall guide, right? The Supporting the African American Learner talks to us about four principles, right? Principle number one is we cannot do the work that Black children need done in schools without first addressing belief systems, right? People who do not believe in Black children should not teach Black children because they cannot pull their greatness out, right? Like, let's just name that. Let's call it what it is, right? Number two, equity doesn't happen by accident. It is systemic. And so we have to build systems for equity. I wish the great Dr. Kieseda was on this call. I got the opportunity to work with her at Locke. We built a cohort. When we looked and said, there are not enough Black children in AP classes. As an English teacher, she said, I want to build a cohort. We understand that when Black children have sort of a clique, a crew, a team of people to go with them into spaces where they are not otherized or feel singular, right? That they are not only more successful, but more likely to engage, right? We got to build whole cohorts of Black AP students with content that was tailored to them before the Black AP course came out. And we watched tremendous success happen, right? Build the system and they will engage it, right? When we expect their greatness. Principle number three of supporting African American learner, right, is culturally relevant, sustaining, and high quality instruction. So, not just instruction that centers parts of their identity, but high quality instruction that revitalizes them. So, not only talks to them about slavery, but talks to them about all of the contributions, right? All of the ways that reflects 360 degrees of their greatness and the greatness of their own people, right? As well as being cognitively and intellectually sound instruction, right? So, not all things hip hop, although I love my hip hop, don't get me wrong, right? But all the ways. And then, of course, principle number four, which Dr. Howard alluded to earlier, which is mitigating the accumulation of disadvantage, just recognizing, right, that being Black in society, right, comes with anti-Blackness, period, full stop, right? Let's name that. With that has come disproportionate impact from other systems, other education systems, health systems, housing systems, right? There is an accumulation of challenges that Black children are facing that not necessarily all other children are facing. And so when we build programming to build equity and to elevate their greatness, we must take those things into account and be prepared to address them.
Well put, Dr. Noyes. Well put. And when we think about there are a number of questions about how do we change the composition of our workforce to better reflect our young people, in particular, to have more Black educators, not only teachers, but administrators, school counselors, school psychologists. I'm wondering for the panel if there's strategies, even in LA or statewide. I know our Dr. Stanley Johnson's team, who leads our educator diversity work, has highlighted in our work strategies and models for strengthening pathways and the pipeline. But would folks be willing to share examples of those model pathways and retention strategies? I'll make it open-ended. And if not offhand, we'd be happy to share a number of resources from our team. But I'd say, yeah. In general, though, I'm curious even how the county's thinking about this, or even with Genius, Dr. Noyes, as we're designing the work, how are we thinking about educator capacity? And not just the capacity of Black educators, but all educators involved and committed to the success of Black students.
You're throwing some big questions my way, Dr. Bishop, but I appreciate
I
it.
know.
I am currently sort of obsessed with neuroscience and neurobiology, right? The neurobiology of behavior. Um, More than 10 years ago now, right? Zaretta Hammond talked to us about why students needed to feel safe in class, right? Not just why learning needed to be relevant to them, but that it needed to be responsive. And part of responsiveness, right, is a sense of safety, of intellectual and emotional safety, right? And so when I think about the educator workforce, I think that people of color, Black folks specifically, seeking to enter education have the same challenges entering the field of education as Black children do on campuses, right? The way people treat Black adults is the way they treat Black children. And I say that as a Black woman with this wild hair. And for people who know me in person, you also know I'm very dark. I'm almost 6 feet tall. Like I've lived this experience for a long time, right? And so when we step into the room and bring Blackness, right, and we're comfortable with it, and then we want to engage in discussions that include Black voices, right? Those things are not necessarily always welcomed in education programs that where we don't dominate. And so my question is how are we making teaching attractive for Black people? How are we making room and space in schools of education, in admin programs, in those places? How are we inviting Black brilliance, Black genius into those spaces, right? And then seeking to leverage the knowledge it brings as opposed to fight it. I spent what feels like my entire career, especially as a former special education teacher, fighting to get people to do things I knew to be right, even when I had the results to prove it, right? Um, and so I think Black educators are having the same experiences in school, right? If you want, like, we already know that educators don't make enough money, so that's its own challenge, right? So that would be helpful, right? But also, like, how are we creating space for Black genius to be invited, right? Cultivated, protected, because that piece is important, and then leveraged, right? And then invited into schools so that they can meet the needs of children. And I think belonging and the neurobiology of behavior is fundamentally important to that process. How do we create psychological safety, emotional safety, and political climate, physical safety for folks to be in those spaces to bring the truth and then to practice in the truth and to share it with other people?
Yeah, I just echo that sentiment. I think all of us are interested in good schools, and there's a lot of discussion about what makes a good school. And in general, I think the research shows that good schools are schools with lots of good students, okay? But I'm more interested in better understanding and identifying great schools. And I think great schools are those schools that implement strong practices, that have skilled teachers, inspired leadership, and community engagement. So finding those schools, identifying those schools where the practices are strong are what is interesting to me. There are schools with lots of Black teachers that are strong and informed leadership. We've heard about them. There are also schools where the majority of teachers at that school are not Black, and they still manage to create nurturing environments where all children can thrive. And so, what we want to learn more about is the range of characteristics and strategies, and more importantly, the strategies and practices that can be carried, by anyone, by everyone, that help create nurturing environments for Black children wherever they are, whether they're one of 10 kids at the school or are the majority.
Thank you, Dr. James. Well put into shameless plug for California, the Reach Network, Race Education and Community Healing. Dr. Corral, if you could put your email in the chat. This is a statewide effort that our center is leading with Berkeley and Travis Bristol's team to promote alternatives to suspensions, but it's much deeper than that. It's fundamentally how do we provide new tools around building positive relationships in educational settings and more preventative work, so suspensions become a last resort. And really, how do we change cultures in schools so again, suspensions are not the focal point. And the zero tolerance policies that Gene was highlighting when he was at Dorsey, which had negatively impacted him. So Dr. Crowell, if you'd put that in the chat, also working with the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, looking at this Black Educator Initiative statewide, looking at if we're supporting more board certified teachers, what does that mean in terms of Black educators who are board certified? What does that mean in terms of their trajectory and the retention? But I want to transition over to the elephant in the room, which we've kind of got to a little bit. I'm gonna give you the hard question, Rising Star Gene McAdoo, because I think you can handle it. But I think there's a lot of questions about in the current environment, which is in your face anti-Black, frankly, political environment. For folks who are committed to our young people, what advice do you give to the field, to folks in this moment, to stay unapologetically focused, but disciplined and clear about the path forward? And I think you can handle this question, Gene.
Thank you, Dr. Bishop. Yeah, I think I was actually thinking about this a little bit before we hopped on the call. And I think this question made me think about how recently the Trump administration was forced to drop its suit against, I believe it was UCLA, right, for just lack of having a strong case. Right, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know what the language is, but and so I think that made me think about, right, we need not obey in advance, right? Like we need to stay committed to our students and to ourselves and to the work that we've been doing. I think that's the first part, right? It's staying committed. Something I've been urging to like my college students that I work with is about staying brave, right? Being willing to fight. So I think that's the first thing, right? We're talking about Black history. We're talking about Black studies, right? And that coming from a tradition, a political tradition of defending ourselves and fighting for, a liberatory education. So it starts with standing 10 toes down, and recommitting, right? And I think also learning from the successful models that we've seen, right? Whether it's the outliers that we've talked about here, or whether it's the things that are happening at Dorsey, and just continuing to build on those, and take what we need, and leave what's not working for us. So I think it's a mix of things, but it really starts with being committed, right? Being committed to the work and not obeying in advance. 'Cause I think just witnessing how the Trump administration has been losing these battles. It has been very invigorating for us, right? And knowing that the work that we're doing is righteous, right? And that we're gonna win. And so we need to stay committed.
Thank you, Gene. Gene, you're getting
And I
lots of
I
emojis
want
and
to
claps. Yeah, go ahead,
I
Dr. James.
100%. I just want to agree and offer that all of these initiatives that we're talking about have come about because of struggle and because of resistance, because we've pushed. None of these have just, oh, we think we'll do this right now.
Mhm.
No, these have
Mhm.
come out of demands,
Mhm.
out of organizing, out of real conscious efforts. And so those are ongoing. They do work. They are working and they will work. And I started my own comments by grounding the work emotionally and intellectually in the knowledge that public schools themselves are a product of that kind of commitment, the yearning of Black people for their own education um, did not just spring up in the 70s. This is rooted in our enfranchisement itself.
Beautifully put, Dr. James and Dr. Jacobson. As we go to the panel going around here, I wanted to get to you to think about when we think about indicators for success right now. What measures do we need in this moment? Um, what measures matter, and what measures have we been overly obsessed with? You could say to think about Black student success and overall student learning and health.
Well, I mean, we're really limited, I think, in terms of we can only look at the data that are available. And so, fundamentally that just means test scores. It could mean graduation rates, uh, suspension rates, absenteeism rates. We have a lot less visibility at a big scale into things like student belonging and well-being, and those are measured in some degree by surveys that some schools administer, but there isn't really a standardized approach for that. And so um, I think with the outlier project, the quantitative analysis that we're doing is really just kind of a springboard into lots more questions that are blossoming out of that are just going to have to be answered or explored with qualitative research. So that means going into the schools and talking to principals and teachers and and students possibly, and to really understand, you know, what are the aspects of the school culture, the leadership at the school that really foster this sense of trust between administrators and teachers and students all throughout the school. Um, and I think it'll be really fascinating to kind of look at, this range of schools that are all across the county, some of which have really high proportions of Black students, some of which have smaller proportions of Black students, and just looking at what are some of the common threads between these schools in terms of practices and cultural um, grounding that are, apparent and seem to really be driving these patterns that we're seeing in the quantitative data.
Thank you, Dr. Jacobson. As we wrap the panel conversation here, and this is hard for my partners and colleagues here, but I'm going to say in 30 seconds or less, if you could give folks the one takeaway you want them to understand from this conversation. Yes, we're going to go into breakout rooms, but from your presentation, let's go to Dr. Noyes, Dr. James, and then close out with Jean McAdoo. Again, what's the one thing you want folks to take away from this conversation today? Dr. Noyes, you're up.
The outcomes of Black children are directly proportional to our investment in them. Invest well, invest wisely, invest often, and we'll see, and Black children will get what they deserve.
Dr. James.
Wow, 30-second soundbite and me are not best friends. I think I think I really want to say that the questions we ask fundamentally frame the answers that we're able to get. And so looking intentionally at where we see good things happen is incredibly important.
And actually, I'm gonna go to Dr. Jacobson and then Jean. Jean, you're our anchor, but yeah, Dr. Jacobson, one more time, 30 seconds or less.
I just am really grateful for all the work that we've been doing at the center and you know partnerships with LACO and other LEAs, and just super interested in digging deeper from what we've been seeing with the quantitative data and talking to people and just hearing stories about what it is that is different about these schools where Black students are able to thrive.
Yeah, and I'll say I think it's important to stay committed to the work. As much as our students are. Something I didn't mention is that Students Deserve and the Police Free Schools Coalition, they're outside of they're in the school board meetings every week, to this day. And they were recently able to get an additional $25 million funded to it. So it's about staying committed to the work in the face of all of the repression that we're seeing and the pushback that we're seeing. Staying committed to the work and being as brave as our students are. So.
Well, I want to thank the panel for handling some really difficult questions you didn't know I was going to ask of you, but just honored to work with you. And our investment in this work is clear, and we are not done. We're just scratching the surface. But thank you all for your commitment. And now we're going to shift to breakout rooms and dig into these specific issues and initiatives and areas of work. Dr. James, I believe you're
Yeah,
facilitating
and I just want to add that you're welcome to move between the breakout rooms. You may have, you can drop in on any of them. And so they will be, we're inviting you to join any of the ones. The first breakout room is going to be Genius Statewide Initiative. The second, Black Academic Success in Los Angeles County. And the third, Black Student Achievement Plan, the Dorsey case study. So you're welcome to start wherever you like and move in between them. We're going to have them open for about 15 minutes. Okay. As everyone trickles back into the room. Are we all here now? I don't know. But I'm hoping that everyone had useful conversations, and we certainly were taking notes in all of the room. But we'd like to offer a chance for reflection. We're going to share a exit poll with you and ask you to kind of just share with us what's one thing you learned today that you want to share with others in your community. So if you can just add a sticky note to our Zoom whiteboard, that just, maybe list one thing that you want to be sure and take with you.
And
That would be great.
Dr. James, are we doing report backs or we're doing the activity right now?
Oh,
That's fine.
well, now we're in the activity, but I would.
It's
I'm
okay.
sorry,
It's
I just
okay.
read what was in front of me. I forgot about the report backs. So, you know,
We can do some quick
yeah.
report backs from each room
Yeah. Let's
while
do it.
folks are
Maybe
adding stickies.
we can multitask, right?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
While the visuals fly past our screen.
Mhm.
Um, Gene, in your room, we talked about Dorsey and Black Student Achievement Plan. Any big takeaways, conversations that you had you want to share?
Yeah, I think there was a general sentiment around just uh a- appreciative, people being appreciative, myself being appreciative of being able to share this information and dispel a lot of, I guess, misunderstandings about what's going on with BSAP, given all the back and forth with the different court rulings. So there was that, and I think also just trying to figure out how we can replicate some of these things, and just in general, reimagine how we support our students. And I think one of the big things that came up was increasing parent engagement, um, and that being an important element of how we reimagine our educational ecosystem. So yeah.
Thanks, Gene. And Dr. James, Dr. Jacobson, in your room, where you discussed the Black Student Success Outliers work and broader research.
Lots of folks wanted to know strategies for use in their particular location, and one of the things that was brought up and that we discussed a bit was how important the issue of not only family engagement but community engagement as a strategy for attracting more young people into programs so that they may not be currently incorporated into, and supporting Black young people, particularly in places where they are fewer in number. So incorporating community engagement in addition to family engagement is what struck me in our rooms. Uh, Dr. Jacobson, anything else?
I don't have too much to add, but we had some really great questions in the room, and just really appreciate everybody who joined us.
It is exciting to see people so engaged in the work, and if I had it to do over again, I would have said, everybody's got to share a good story for me. But that'll be the next webinar. Dr. Noyes, what happened in room one?
So many rich questions about how folks can get involved, both as individuals and LEAs. And then someone asked us a really powerful question about whether or not discussing Black children during Black History Month is enough. And we had a beautiful
Mm.
discussion about what does it mean to really institutionalize the elevation of Black brilliance and Black genius, and how do we do that?
Oh, love it.
And I was excited to have a colleague from Oregon, from Eugene, on the call. So there's,
Ah,
I'm sure there are folks from outside of California who joined us today, but an offering um, from Eugene to to jump in and support what we're doing with Genius and to learn from one another. So thank you, Shmika. Okay, so I think um, I think we're ready to get to the we're now in the closing activity. Dr. James, um do you want to add anything or highlight
well,
from the sticky notes? Yeah, go ahead.
I love the sticky notes, and I loved this. This is great. So yeah, this exit poll, I just wanted to know more about you. And so if there's one thing that I like least about webinars is that, sometimes there's not enough opportunity to get to know you up close and personal. I mean, the good side is that we don't have to fight LA traffic, but the bad side is sometimes I don't get to know the people, other people in the room. So I'm really grateful for you participating in the exit poll, which just tells us a little bit about what brought you here, and then the previous activity, which let us know a bit about what kind of things that you want to take back. But it is incredibly important, the work that you all do. Showing up to this webinar is a part of that work. Your interest and your concern, your commitment to the academic and the social development of Black students is commendable, important. You are the wind beneath their wings. And I just want you to know that we see that work and that we view ourselves as co-participants in this work with you. And so thank you so much for being here and for sharing yourselves with us a bit today, and for accepting the things that we have learned from practice and from research, that we hope will move our goals forward, so that all Black students and all students who are often less regarded will receive the kind of support that they deserve.
And Dr. James, I'm seeing here for the poll, best practices and tools and
Yes.
resources are the clear demand. This is
Yeah.
helpful insight for us and for Genius and our research as a center. So thank you for completing the poll. I'm gonna end the poll. And you have everybody's contact information. I know Dr. Howard wishes he was here today. Um, but he was pulled into jury duty, and when duty calls, you have to go. But I
I
want to
also
thank
want to mention the
you.
resources
Yeah.
that you can link and access. There are a number of reading resources, and also just listservs that you can get on, particularly for those of you looking for more information around best practices and other kind of tools and resources. I really highly recommend, certainly ours, but also the Genius website, which the Laco Genius Padlet has so many wonderful resources that I think will be useful to many of you.
Yes. And please reach out to us. Hopefully, you have a stronger connection to some of these reports, some of these ideas and initiatives. Now you have a human face to put to them. And just want to leave us with this thought too. And again, thank you, Dr. Noyes, Dr. James, Dr. Jacobson, Gene McAdoo, future Dr. Gene
Soon to
McAdoo,
be,
pretty
yeah.
soon here. Um, but and Geneva, again, thank you for organizing. Writer and activist James Baldwin says, "History is not the past; it is the present. We carry our history with us. We are our history." And I think that the question I have for all of us is, what future are we writing right now for our young people, and how do we get more folks on board? So this group here of 100 some odd folks expands to more people who feel not only committed intellectually but emotionally to the work that extends far beyond February. So I just want to thank you all for the work that you're doing right now. As Jean said, we don't need approval. We can move forward unapologetically, and I hope you do so. And just know that you are not alone, and you have colleagues across the state, across the country who are going to walk right with you. So thank you for your time, and thank you for being part of today's webinar, which again, we'll send out materials as soon as possible with all the links and information that you need. Have a wonderful day, and have a good Black History Month. Thanks, everybody.